Hi guys, it's Corinne, and today I'm here with a mini album tutorial on an album similar to this. I will go through step by step how to make an album similar. And what I will probably do is make it a 3-part series. And the reason I will do that is the first part I will make the binding of the book, the inside pages of the book. Probably the second part will be the cover of the book, and then the third part will be pockets, add-ons, things like that. And then probably I guess I'll make a fourth part with decorating the book. So the reason I think I will do that is that way if somebody is looking for something specific just on how to do the cover, they don't have to watch the entire mini album series just to find that. So I hope you follow along. I hope you enjoy this. And the first thing I want to do is just kind of go over a few things that I use. And I may not be thinking of everything right now, so if I come across something else, I'll let you know. But what I like to use is a centering ruler. This is not necessary, but it is helpful. I use the Tim Holtz one. I use a regular ruler, my T-square, so just a regular ruler will be handy. I use a cutter, and I've pretty much cut out everything ahead of time because I usually use a heavy-duty trimmer, not this one, just a heavy-duty one, and it's over on a different workstation. So instead of bringing it under the camera and having you guys watch me cut out paper, I didn't think that was necessary, so I've already prepared a lot of this. I use double-sided tape. This tape is called Miracle Tape that I get from Viva Las Vegas Stamps, and if you need a link, let me know. A pair of scissors, a bone folder, a scoreboard. I use the Martha Stewart. Any scoreboard you have is great, and some magnets. Here are some basic gray magnets. They're called the small magnets. And I got these online from Amazon. I also use these tiny magnets that I got off of eBay. And actually you'll probably see me use these as opposed to these. I save these for larger things that need a little bit more strength, but these little magnets are very strong. I got them off a seller off eBay, so I will put a link in the description box below on where I got those. So to start, how I came up with this is I saw everyone making mini albums with envelopes. And I tried one and I did not like how flimsy they were, how thin the paper was. So I went ahead and just designed my own basic pages that are similar to envelopes. So here's a page that's done. And let me back up and tell you, I use 8.5 by 11. This is paper that I got from, let me see if I can get it without a glare, from Walmart. It's 65-pound black, and I love this paper. You can also make this, of course, with 12 by 12, and it might be a little bit easier. So the reason I'm giving you directions on how I do it is because I have stacks and stacks of 8.5 by 11, so that's what I prefer to use. It's easier to get my hands on. The 12 by 12 I usually order online, so I try to use the 8.5 by 11 if I can. So this is the paper that I use, and here is what a finished pocket will look like. Okay, so I make 6 pockets. I've already prepared 3 of them, and I will go over the other 3 on how I make them. So the front part of the pocket, I cut 6 pieces at 8.5 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to score them at 5/8 on both ends on the 8.5 inch side. I will, of course, go through all this as I'm making it as well, but I'm just giving you the measurements to start. So you need 6 pieces of those if you're making 6 pages, if you're going to make an album just like mine, and 6 pages of paper to go on the back of those. And those are 7 7/16 by 5 3/16. So 7/16 is the line right before 7.5, and 3/16 is the line right before 7.25. And the reason that we do that is the page ends up being 7.25 by 5.25. So this piece is just going to be a little bit smaller, so when you glue it on, it lines up very well. So let's go ahead and get started with those. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my 8.5 by 5.25 and I'm going to score them. Again, I've already prepared 3 of them, so I'm going to prepare 3 of them on camera. So you want to score this at 5. You want to put this on the 8.5 inch side, and you want to score it at 5/8 of an inch, excuse me. Flip it around and score it at 5/8 of an inch again. The 5/8 of an inch is the one line right before 3/4. And if you rub your paper and get a little bit of oil on it, it slides a little bit easier. Okay, so flip it around and do 5/8 again. Set that aside, do the next one. 5/8. Flip it around and do 5/8. Now the next thing I like to do is miter the corners. That way when you fold them, you're not getting, you're eliminating a little excess bulk. So I'm cutting from this score line right there just to the end, just a little bit off. Okay. And I do that on all 4 corners of all the pages. And I like to start from the score line out. You can do it the other way as well, but it's a little bit more precise if you start from the score line out. Okay, so I did that to all 4 corners of the paper. Okay, so now that we have all of our pieces cut out, we need to adhere the backs onto them. So I've just scored them, and you want to fold against the part that bubbles out. So I scored it on the board this way. You want to fold against where you scored. That just gives it a little bit cleaner look. And go ahead and burnish down your score with your bone folder. I do that to all my pieces first. Next thing you want to do is adhere down your back piece of paper. You can use a wet glue for this. You can use double-sided tape. I choose to use hot glue. It adheres quick, it's fast, and it really holds up well. So the reason that we made these, again, this page ends up being 7.25 by 5.25, and we're making this back piece just a hair smaller so it goes on nice. So what I like to do is grab a non-stick mat. That way if any of my hot glue gets on it, it rubs right off. And I just kind of match it up best that I can. And if there ends up being a little bit of overhang or anything like that, you can always cut that off at the end. Usually you would never see anything like that because once you add your pattern paper. So once I get it where I want, I hold it down with my arm, lift this side up, add my glue, and this is, I do this whether I'm using hot glue or wet glue. I do the same thing. Okay, so this is what you end up with. Now we're going to do the same thing, hold it down and add our glue to this side. If you use sticky tape on this, you can't really adjust it, so it's just your preference. Most of the album you will see that I would only use sticky tape. I do not use wet glue because it just doesn't, I've made an album before with wet glue and it just did not turn out well. So I only make them with real strong sticky tape, but maybe try it with wet glue. Maybe you prefer it that way. So I'm just going to do the exact same. And this is my fake envelope, if that's what you want to call it. I like it so much better with cardstock. It's very sturdy, and yet you're making a pocket out of it. One side will be for your binding and the other will be for your pocket. So last one. Okay, great. So now you should have 6 of these pockets. And again, this is for a single, what I call a single album. This size of an album. If you want to do a chunky album, you would want to do double this. You would want to make 12 pages. Completely up to you. So next thing I like to do are my hinges. And I use the Laura Dennison's Stack the Deck hinge. She has a great tutorial on it. I'm going to go ahead and do it here as well, but I will also link to her tutorial in the description box below. That way you can check out her tutorial if you'd like as well. And the 3 sizes you need for a single album is 7 1/8 by 2 3/4. Now, let me just say the reason I do 7 1/8 is it's just a hair smaller than the height of our book. I like it to be really snug, so this is just gonna barely fit in, and we might even trim this a little bit later, but I always start out with 7 1/8 by 2 3/4. The second piece is 7 1/8 by 2 1/4. And the third piece is 7 1/8 by 1 3/4. Now the same thing you want to do on all of these is score them at 3/4 of an inch, flip it around 3/4 of an inch. You're going to do the same thing on all 3 pieces. So 3/4 of an inch, flip it around 3/4 of an inch. Take my next piece and I'm going to do the exact same thing. 3/4 of an inch, flip it around 3/4 of an inch. This will end up giving you 1/4 of an inch gusset between every page. If you want a larger gusset, like a 1/2 inch, you would just have to figure out the measurements that way. But this is the standard 1/4 inch gusset, which works pretty well if you're not putting too many dimensional things in it. Okay, so on all 3 pieces, I scored at 3/4 of an inch in and then flipped it around and did the same thing. Now we need to go ahead and add our tape on all of the pieces. These pieces on the side, the 3/4 of an inch, will be what holds our pockets on. So on all of them, I'm adding double-sided tape on, and then adding tape on only one of the sides to adhere all 3 of these together. So let me show you what I mean. I'm using my 1/2 inch tape here, and I want to go from end to end. I want this to be very strong. So I'm going to do this on all sides that are going to, my pockets will be adhering to. When I make a chunky book, I get asked quite often how I do the binding for the chunky book. I do the exact same thing, except I just make 2 of these. And then of course you make the spine a little bit larger to accommodate for the wider book. So I'm going to burnish those down. Now I need to add tape to just one of these sides so it adheres to the next side up. I'm choosing this side since I have my writing on it, that way I can hide it. Now this, I'm using my 1/4 inch tape. And I just want to give myself a straight edge here. And again, I want to make sure I'm going from edge to edge. Okay, so the smallest piece is done. I'll move on to my next piece. Again, these are my sides that will be holding onto my pocket, so I'm adhering tape to all 4 of these sides. Okay, so now I need to add tape to one of the sides in the middle. I'm choosing again this side, being that I have my writing on this side. And I'm adding tape up to the score line, but I'm not touching the score line. So what I like to do on this piece is add my 1/4 inch tape, pull this side off, and then add, excuse me, my 1/2 inch tape first, and then add my 1/4 inch tape on top of it, because I want my tape to go all the way across, because this is part of my binding. So I want to make sure it's really adhered well. Okay, and I'll remove that other piece when I add it to the next layer, which is this one right here. Again, I'm just making sure I do not go over the score line. Okay, so same thing on this one. This can use an extra piece in the middle, but I'm going to leave it like it is until I actually adhere it to the book. Otherwise, I have to worry about it sticking to other things. So I'm just gonna leave it like it is. I'll add another piece just to make sure that entire bottom is adhered on. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and put my hinges together. So here's the largest piece, which is the 2 3/4. This is the 2 1/4, and I'm going to adhere it onto this. You can measure it if you'd like. I pretty much eyeball it. You just want it to sit right in the middle of this piece. So what I look at is the 2 score lines here and the 2 score lines there, and I just try and, again, eyeball it and make sure it's pretty even. And it can be deceiving with the tape, so I try not to look at the edges here. I only try and look at the edges of the paper itself. Okay, and once that is down, I want to go ahead and press it down, and the exact same top of that. Okay, and then I'll just burnish that down. So what you have here now is your binding for 6 pages. Again, if you're making a chunky book, you just want to make 2 of these. And when you adhere it onto the spine, you're going to adhere one and then adhere the second one. Okay, so now I'm going to set that aside for now. The next part is putting together the cover of the book. So I'm going to end the video here, and part 2 will be how the making of the book itself. So I hope you join me for that. Thanks for watching.